My name is Roz Cruz, and I am the Associate Curator of Programs here at WCMA. I'm so happy to welcome you into this space and into this exhibition called Soil WCMA and Building a New Museum. So that's what we're here today to talk about. You're attending a Curatorial Close Look program, which is something we do every month to celebrate and think about our exhibitions with an on-staff curator. We're taking a holiday in August, but we'll be back in September and October and November, so please come back and see us. Today we're gonna hear from our director, Pam Franks, who is going to share about the exhibition, but also just generally about the new building project. It'll last for about 40 minutes and time for questions after that. So if you need the restroom, they're downstairs, and please feel free to, do what you need to do. We have 2 more programs in our summer school series, which started this week on Tuesday with our WCMA educators, thinking about how engagement and education will look in the new building. And on Tuesday, we'll be talking about collections and exhibitions. Tuesday, July 16th from 5 to 6, and then 6 to 7, we'll have a patio party and get to engage in more casual ways about the topic. And on July 23rd, we're gonna have the architects of the building, as well as several members of the building committee here to talk in small groups with folks who come all about sustainability efforts at the new building. So that should be a really great opportunity if you're interested in learning more and having a chance to really talk casually with everyone. A couple things, we are experimenting this summer with registration. I'm sure some of you registered through our website, and if you didn't, that's no problem. We're really just wondering if you want to help us figure out more about our audiences, you can register, and it's totally optional, but helpful for us thinking about audience and how we're going to develop that for the new building. I also have a feedback survey, if you're interested in that. On the table, there's little pink cards that have a QR code, and if you don't want to use a QR code, you can find me and I'll give you the survey link. So that's all I have before I pass it over to Pam. Pam? Here you go.
Thanks, Roz. Thanks, everyone, for coming. It's so great to see you. We're so excited about this building project. Before I get started, I want to do another announcement. This is the closing weekend of Emancipation, the Unfinished Project of Liberation, which has been an incredible exhibition for us. So if you haven't seen it, or if you've seen it once and you want to see it again, please do so this weekend. This exhibition was a collaboration with the Amon Carter Museum in Fort Worth, Texas. And the lead there is an incredible curator named Maggie Adler, who's a Williams graduate, a double Williams graduate, undergrad and MA. And on our side, Destiny Fillmore, who was a Mellon Curatorial Fellow, was the curatorial lead. And she is now the assistant curator of modern and contemporary art, working on the new modern wing at the Met, and is just really extraordinary. You can see Destiny talking about the exhibition in many videos that we have on our website, also talking about the collection. But I just wanted to encourage you all to also see that show while you're here. And also I want to highlight that there's a great catalog for that exhibition. So please do take a look at that as well. So we're making a new building for WCMA. The Williams College Museum of Art is approaching its 100th anniversary. Amazing. In 2026. So the museum opened in this building, actually 26-27. Was founded in 26, opened in 27. The space that we're sitting in today was originally built as the college's first library and has been part of the museum for the last 98 years. So it's very nice actually to have this exhibition about the designs for the future building in this most historic space and have the sort of the old and new in dialogue, and the kind of way that the resonant architectural experience of this space that's so dear to so many people can sort of remind us of how important architecture is in the experience of art and just in learning in general and creating a sense of place. So So I'm really delighted to have these images in this space, and also really delighted to share them with you. If all goes on the current schedule, the new museum will open in 2027, possibly around Memorial Day. There's still a lot to do between now and then, so I'm not committing specifically to that date, but that's sort of what we're working with in the planning. We started the planning. I've been here for almost 6 years now, and the discussions about a new building had been going on for a long time before I arrived, but we've been working on it nonstop for the last 6 years. So starting with a programming study, thinking about the teaching mission of this museum, the ways that what students learn here are important and transformative for what they take out into the world, whether it's as museum visitors and dedicated audience members or professionals, and just sort of thinking about everything that makes this museum what it is, the collection, the teaching mission, the students, the ways we engage with the community, and really sort of dove into a programming study to think about what spaces were needed to optimize that mission going forward. How could we unlock that specific potential of this museum? COVID hit, and we actually were able to spend a lot more time on the programming study. So we came to something that was really almost like a roadmap for the future that wove into our strategic planning, our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility planning. All of our top priorities sort of wove into thinking about the museum going forward. A huge part of that was our sustainability planning, which we were able to do with the college's overall strategic plan, thinking about what sustainability means for museums. I mean, art museums have the reputation of being energy hogs, and I think that's true in many cases, both in terms of the buildings and the needs to kind of maintain certain conditions in the buildings, but also the ways we operate. So thinking about how this new building could really accomplish a new standard for sustainability. And we're going for a certification called Living Building Challenge Core, which is very complex and has to do with the building itself and the way we operate it going forward and the way we live in it, what it contributes to the community. So it's a layered approach, but one way that you can sort of start to think about what we're trying to do here is we're aiming to have energy usage be as little as 30% of current typical museums in a similar climate. So 70% lower. So it's an interesting sort of balancing act between the teaching mission, making the collection as accessible as possible, preserving the collection for future generations, and thinking about the sustainability of museums going forward in a way that we all need to be thinking about. And the way I think about it is, again, in terms of the educational mission, if students are here learning about what it takes to be a sustainable museum going forward, they then have those lessons and that knowledge when they go out into the world and think about how museums and art and culture function in society in an ongoing way and continue to break important new pathways to a more sustainable future for us all that includes collections and art, but is also very sensitive to the world that we live in and existing in synergy. So all of those things were strategic priorities that were really critical to us as we've been developing this plan. And we're working with the exact right architects for that. We're working with a firm, Soil, as Roz said. They're based in Brooklyn. They're established now, but even 5 years ago when we were thinking about what architecture firm we were going to work with, they were definitely becoming more and more known month in and month out. We looked at 40 different firms with all of our strategic priorities in mind, and we narrowed it down to 12 firms that we requested proposals from, and then we interviewed 4. And every step of the way, Soil rose to the top. Soil is founded by 2 incredible people, Jing Liu and Florian Eidenberg, and they founded their firm in 2008, which they always say was not the most auspicious time to found their design firm. But they actually responded very nimbly and adapted to circumstances and thought, all of their practices are about how architecture in the built environment exists in all its various contexts. Some of the things that appealed to us were that they had built a museum, a freestanding museum on a campus at UC Davis. So UC Davis had not had an art museum before, and in 2016 they completed the Manetti Shrem Art Museum at UC Davis, which was very much, I mean, it's totally different than our museum's going to be, but very much in response to the climate in Davis, the long tradition of studio art, the relative absence of art history, and the wish for art to sort of catalyze conversations on that particular campus. It was also sort of in conversation with the other arts there. Anyway, that was an inspiration to us, and the design really reflected that context. And we knew we needed a design here that would respond to our context. One of the really special things about being at Williams is that you're learning in the most gorgeous natural environment, and the chance to get outside and really be inspired by nature is sort of an integral part of learning here on campus, and we wanted that to continue to the new museum building. So we really wanted someone who was sensitive to the seasonality, really appreciative of the natural surrounds, a design firm that would recognize and sort of embrace the possibilities of being in this arts ecosystem with other museums and other creative energy all around, but also this really beautiful natural surroundings. So in addition to being firmly based in Brooklyn, the couple things I want to say about Soil and Florian and Jing in particular are that it's a very international firm. It's a small firm, 22 people. They always say they speak 12 to 15 languages in the office. It's very creative, very global, very connected. They have points of reference all around the world, but it's also very, very local. And they've done a lot of projects in Brooklyn. And Florian and Jing are partners in life as well as in work, and they have a home just south of Great Barrington. So which they've had for the last 20 years. It's a kind of a small. What do they call it? A hut sometimes. They call it different funny things. It's a lovely place, and it has allowed them to really partake in the cultural scene here. So they were very, very familiar with the museums in the area, with WCMA, with Jacob's Pillow, Tanglewood, all the rich history of the Berkshires, and they brought that to bear on the project as well. So I think we're very, very lucky to be working with them. So that's my prelude. We're a pretty big group, and the images are not gigantic. I want to be sure people can see so that we can just really talk about the design that we're getting ready to embark on building. We'll be breaking ground in September. Can everybody see these two? Please feel free to stand up or move your seat up, whatever's comfortable. So the new museum will be right across from the Rotary at the corner of Route 7 and 2. And it will be, so if you're in Field Park looking north, this will be the view of the museum that you see. And obviously, one of the distinctive features of this building is this very organic roof line that resonates with the mountains around. You can see it here directly from the south and here from the southeast. The roof line's very sculptural, and it changes form as you move around the building. There's not any point of view on this building where you can predict what the roof line is going to look like from the next point of view as you circle the building. We asked the design team to consider a roof form that was light, open, welcoming, and had an elegant line. So, thinking about museum architecture typologies and how a building announces itself as a museum was actually not in our mandate to the architects, but how engagement, welcoming, creativity, surprise, all of the kinds of allure of a really beautiful form that is itself sculptural, that is itself really resonating with the context. That was much more on our mind. So we didn't have an idea in mind of what this form would be. And the process, elsewhere in the exhibition, there are some slides about the process. The process has been incredibly iterative. That's another thing that we really loved about Soil. They wanted to know what the museum folks cared about, what we wanted to, unlock, what potential we wanted to unlock with the collections. They wanted to hear from the students like crazy. They did endless workshops with the students. They wanted to know about faculty collaborations. They wanted to hear about how this museum fit with the community. So the idea that the process itself was very iterative and very responsive to all of the many stakeholders was core to the concept of this building. The other thing you can see from these two initial views is that the building is transparent. So there are large curtain walls of glass, and you can see into the building. And you see, at many points, you actually see light in the building, and you can see all the way through the building, from one side to the other, to the landscape on the other side. So transparency and an idea that, this is a place for people, and a place where I can go is really, really critical. As you come up from the southeast, there's a study center, which is the kind of heart of the museum where all of the academic program takes place. There's 4 classrooms, there's a collection study room, and then there's a lounge that sort of anchors all of those classrooms. So that's what you see when you're first coming up from the southeast, which is coming from campus. I should say that the building on this site is right at the kind of welcome point to campus and to town. So I think this location will be very visible and very accessible, whether you're driving into town, whether you're walking from campus. And in every case, the idea is that it kind of says this is a place of learning, a place of creativity, a place of art, and it's really a kind of welcoming, come in and think and create and join us in this endeavor. Of course, the museum is a public-facing part of the campus, and it is a place where, as a member of the community, one can come in and sort of see what's happening as part of a Williams College education. We do teach with faculty. Faculty come to teach with the collection from every single discipline across campus. It's a very, very lively program. So as you approach from the southeast, seeing that study center first makes a lot of sense. And then coming up to the central kind of entryway, you see right through to a central courtyard that's light-filled. And then continuing on, there will be a cafe at the other side. So this is study center, main entrance with the courtyard behind, cafe. And this is the broad walkway coming up from the southeast. I think it might be easiest if we go this direction. So point to a couple of images that I've already sort of alluded to. There are 2 entrances to the museum at the south and the west. The south is primarily pedestrian and bicyclists, and the west is primarily vehicular. So so this is the site of the former Williams Inn, and if you remember that site, there was parking behind, and there will still be parking behind the museum. And the drive will bring you back to that parking and also to accessible parking along the west. And that west entrance will be probably the most likely place. We'll also have a bus drop-off, which we haven't had the benefit of. We'll still have the bus station in front of the museum. The bus, I think many of you probably know, the city bus now stops at the Clark as a matter of course. So it'll be really nice to have it stop in front of WCMA, go on to the Clark, and then make its rounds. So we've been thinking about all of those kinds of things together as well, like how you get from one museum to the other, how you get from campus across, and then also, in the larger region. So it's just thinking together on all these different levels. This is, the order of the spaces is gonna, bear with me. This is actually at the very north of the building. So south entrance, west entrance, and this is a space at the very north of the building. And we had been calling it the break space, the north break space, because we're really exploring interstitial spaces and how how people can make the space of the museum their own through comfortable seating, through reading materials, interpretation spaces, those sorts of things, but also just, use it how you will. It is, a place where we will be able to have receptions and programs as well. Now we're starting to call it the North View Gallery, because the interstitial spaces all point out to the landscape, and they all have this kind of incredible panoramic view of the landscape. So actually kind of integrating the way that the interstitial spaces are themselves places for viewing. And there will be art on view, but there will also be these really spectacular views of the landscape at key moments as you move through the space. Then I was talking about the study center, and this is another one of those interstitial spaces. We haven't chosen furniture yet, but the idea is there. We'll have tables, chairs, we'll have colored pencils, paper, but we'll also just, computer, places to plug in your computer or your phone and do some work before class, or meet with someone after class and sort of reflect on what you've talked about, or just come in and study, hang out. And it will be, I think, a really special place sort of to land as you're heading in and out of courses, or going into the Collection Study Center to look at a specific work. If you can see these images, the floor plans will give you a sense of the overall layout. Again, feel free to come closer. So this is the south entrance that I've been talking about. This is the west entrance. This is the roundabout. So driving in here, there's accessible parking, bus drop-off, more parking back here, walking this way from campus. This is a central lobby. We have a rendering of that over there that I'll mention. So as soon as you come in, there's a very large gallery immediately to your right. We plan to have that gallery be Object Lab, which is our curricular gallery that's on the ground floor here. I hope if you haven't seen that, please do visit. It's on view every semester. We have faculty from across campus choose works from the collection. We have course descriptions. The choices speak to each other across the different classes. And it's a real demonstration of kind of the vitality and energy of the teaching program here. So that'll be the first thing you see on your right when you come in. There will be many opportunities for art on view in the central courtyard and on the walls. And then directly ahead is the first wing of galleries, which will be dedicated to the collection, and we'll be rotating very, very regularly with lots of different interpretive threads and questions and lines of inquiry. And so these 4 galleries, there's 11 galleries overall, these 4 galleries will really show the range of the collection. This is another one of those interstitial spaces looking out to the east. And then there's this sort of central gallery below that, just before that North View Gallery that I mentioned. That'll be a kind of project space. It's a standalone gallery. And then this side of the 5 galleries on the west side are special exhibition gallery. So all of the public program is on the ground floor. And there's a real logical flow, but not a dictated flow. So you don't have to sort of go from one place to the next in only one direction. But you're also, able to kind of move through easily with a clear logic. So from the central lobby where everybody comes in, you can go into the collection galleries or into the special exhibition galleries through this corridor and sort of mill about and then circle through either way. We'll also have an auditorium and the cafe that I mentioned. The auditorium is very flexible. The seating is flexible. It can be row seating, it can be tables and chairs, it could be theater in the round, it could be completely empty of furniture, and you could make art on the, sitting on the floor. So it'll be a flexible space. It's got storage for the chairs right here adjacent. It'll have really nice AV. One of the things that we've heard from our stakeholders on campus is there isn't a great place for film and video screening. So that'll be an exciting addition, and we're working really hard to figure out how the seating can be both movable and comfortable. So these, again, all these levels of thinking. There are 2 other floors to this building. On the upper level, just above this ground floor, the upper floor plan is much smaller footprint. So this line is the full upper floor plan, and that's where museum staff, students, And all of our collaborators that develop the program that'll be on the ground floor will have our workspaces. And then there's a lower level that also has more workspaces, but has a lot of art prep spaces, has loading dock, has storage. One of the interesting things about moving from this facility to the new facility has been really to kind of think about what's happening here and what's working well. We have a lot of gallery space here. And it's very specific, and it's very beloved, and much of it is very kind of, we want to retain certain kind of feelings of the variety of spaces and so forth. We don't have as much storage. We don't have the loading dock that we would like to have. We absolutely do not have the space to prepare work to go on view that we want. And as a teaching museum, it's really important that every aspect of the museum's work is a learning opportunity. And we want to sort of, right now we're not in a position to say this is how museum storage should be when we're working with students. It's more like, well, if you worked in a newer museum, the storage would be more like this. But in our new museum, the storage will be both a teaching opportunity, and it'll be, first and foremost, an opportunity to make the collection much, much more accessible. So, so that's super exciting. So it's a really logical, really compact building. One of the things that I felt very committed to, and I think really the whole team feels very committed to, is we didn't want to build spaces that were going to be empty a lot of the time. So thinking about the spaces that needed to have multiple purposes, like the auditorium, where you might have a large lecture class, you might have a dinner in the evening, you might have a community group or a K-12 group doing an art making activity. All of those things can happen with a kind of shifting around of the setup in there. So you don't have a large space that's not used unless you have a public program one night. So that space will be used. Similarly, the workspaces upstairs are all rimmed with windows, so there's a lot of natural light. But at this point, we're not really thinking about them as dedicated to specific people. We're really thinking about fostering collaboration by having spaces that you could use based on the type of work that you're doing. So that'll be a new model for us too. So we'll have to report back on how that's going. But I'm excited about sort of being in the middle of the space much of the time. And I know some of my colleagues are as well, but also recognizing that museum work is really research intensive and needs quiet some of the time as well. Any questions about the plan? Yeah.
Parking, will that be below grade, so when you look out at the landscape, you won't see it?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's a really great question. So one of the interesting things about this site is from the highest point to the lowest point, there's a 30-foot drop. So in the back, it's much, much lower. So where parking is, actually when you're looking out of this space, you're going to be almost a whole floor level above. So you'll be looking more at the tops of trees and kind of over the cars and not at the cars. So yes, we're not digging down though for the parking. We did look at all the different possibilities for parking underground and so forth. And of course, we're also working with a budget as well as all of our sustainability priorities that I mentioned. So we're making use of that topography. So the lower level, which I don't have a plan of here in the show, is really, it's almost like taking advantage of that decline in the site and going right into it. So yeah, I agree. I didn't want to look out at cars.
So what's the roof material and how reflective is it?
Yes.
Does it deal with snow?
Yeah.
What happens with icicles and drainage?
Yes. Okay, so it's aluminum. It's coated aluminum. It is not reflective. It's certainly not mirror, but it does pick up the tonality of the sky. So on a gray day, it's grayer. On a blue day, it's bluer. So that's all very deliberate, and we have not completely tied down the exact color of the coating, but at this point we're down to frost white versus some other kind of white, and they both look sort of more silvery gray than white, and when we make the decision, it'll be at this nuance level. The One thing I haven't mentioned yet is all around the building, there's this very deep overhang of the roof. And I also haven't mentioned a really key part of this building. It's a mass timber building. You see that here in the study center and in the north break space. So the structure is mass timber. And so back to your question about the roof, the overhang actually manages the water retention and water flow and the timing of the water flowing off of the roof. There is also snow melt technology to make sure that the snow does not build up on the roof. So again, this is all part of that kind of request to the design team and all of our consultants to think about the seasonality of this region and design for that. So it's a complex roof. We're working with a firm called Zahner on the roof, and if you're familiar with Frank Gehry's architecture, they have done Frank Gehry's buildings since the 1980s. The first was the Weissman Art Museum at the University of Minnesota, and I think that was 1983. We were just out looking at that, and they've been working on and perfecting the technology ever since. They're in Kansas City. A bunch of the team was just out there last week, kind of looking at a tabletop mock-up that's more to scale. We're also doing a visual mock-up here that's less about functionality, but more about how the palette of materials works together. So yeah, the roof materials have been a really kind of key part of it. And another thing we loved about soil as we were choosing architects and have continued to love as we're working with them is they're very, very attuned to materials. So they think a lot about how the materials make the visual impact and the physical feeling of the building, the look and feel of the building. So they're very kind of always about roofs. They often talk about how walls don't define this museum. It's much more expansive and a kind of tent-like form that can open up to all kinds of experiences. And there's the roof, there's masonry structure masonry cladding on the timber structure that continues from outside to inside and kind of continues that logic of the relationship between the interior spaces and the exterior beauty. And then the timber structure being exposed so that the wood both shows the logic of the construction but also warms up the space.
So the interior of the roof is wood?
The interior of the roof is wood, yeah. So this is actually the structure that you're seeing, and of course the lighting is all built in. In the galleries, the ceiling is also wood, but it's an acoustic panel, so that will have good acoustic effect. The galleries have wood floors. The common spaces have stone or a concrete aggregate floor that we're still kind of finalizing the decision on. But I think the character of the galleries, we have some that are light-filled like this, and then if we keep going around, 2 are light-filled, and then 9 are much more enclosed and protected from light. So I just love the simplicity of the wood panel ceilings in the galleries and the dialogue with the wood in the gallery floors, which is a reclaimed wood. And then this is the central lobby that everybody sort of pours into, whether you're coming in through the west entrance or the south entrance. Everybody comes into this central lobby. And I think this is a great view to see how the structure, the wood timber structure of the building is very evident when you're in this space and affects your kind of look and feel. There's a point at which the ceiling is very, very high, like 26 feet or so, and then it kind of curves down. And so we're, again, working with another firm, a mass timber firm, to think about what that engineering is. And it's innovative, and it's exciting, and they're excited about the new directions that this project's taking them, but it's not so innovative that it's going to fail. It's really, again, a balancing act of doing something that's both a kind of timeless material and a renewable material, wood, a new technology, but a tested technology. So it's both about kind of the importance of timelessness, but also the importance of looking forward, which is a key message for us. Yes?
What kind of heating system are you using?
So we're using air source heat pumps, and we looked very carefully at geothermal, and we did test wells, and the geology is not conducive to geothermal. We also looked at solar, and we looked specifically at some of the new solar shingles, roof shingles that are being used at the Google headquarters and Tesla and so forth. And those also were not, in a way, they were actually just exactly what I'm just talking about. That it was new innovation, new technology that wasn't actually fully working yet. So it was that we weren't ready to be that much at the bleeding edge for those new solar shingles. But turns out the air source heat pumps are allowing us to meet our energy use guidelines and aspirations. So that's how we're doing that.
So you mentioned a number of consultants. Are they within the umbrella of soil, so ultimately soil's liable for everything, or are they consultants to you and it's up to you guys to coordinate all these different design disciplines?
Yeah, no, great question. So when we decided to go with Soil, who, as I mentioned, is a small firm, 22 people, it was very important that they were partnering with a very large and longstanding and established firm in Massachusetts, Perry Dean Rogers. So they're the architect of record, Soil's the design architect, and then the contract for all the different consultants, the sustainability consultant, the mechanicals consultant, and on down the line, it goes through the contract with PDR. And the design assist as well. There are a few things that we manage directly, probably the furniture and furnishings, so forth. But we even have an art storage consultant that we're working with, and that's going through the PDR process too. So it's all very integrated, and I think that's important. They've been great to work with, and they've done so many campus buildings and have done mass timber buildings before, as has Soil. So the organization seems to be working very well. We do have a great team here on campus as well. Everybody at the museum is very, very involved, but we have many colleagues across campus who are essential to the process as well, including in planning, construction, and design, the Sustainability Center. Of course, all of the faculty and student participation has been really key. So in a way, I think the project management on campus is very much in partnership with the project management of the architect of record.
Who maintains the facility? Is that Wheeler's facilities department?
Yeah.
Or how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And one theme has been that the museum needs to stay pristine and the maintenance needs to be possible. So we've been looking at that with all the design decisions too, like how are we going to keep this as perfect as it's going to be the day that it's built. And so there is a facilities office, so we work closely with the facilities team. There's custodial staff, there's electricians and plumbing and all the building trades. But we will have a dedicated building manager for this building, which is very specialized. And not just that it's very specialized, but as I say, it's really an opportunity to learn about what a museum building can be. So the facilities director that we'll be bringing in will have a teaching role as well. We'll be able to kind of lead the way and help people understand, help students and everybody understand how the building's functioning. So it's a hybrid. So there's lots of campus support. Sometimes we contract out some support, and then we'll have some in-house staff. We're also looking at what it's going to take to do some of the setup that I was talking about, like in the auditorium and that stuff, because that's a lot of work. But it's probably better done in-house than always putting in a request to a partner office on campus, where they've got a lot of other things going on as well. I haven't yet mentioned the landscape. It's critically important to this project. We're, as part of that larger team, we're working with Reed Hildebrand. And they are the landscape architects that did the Clark. They did Tourist Hotel, if you know that place. So they also did a landscape study for Williams about 5 years ago, many other things in this region. And we're looking at a very specific landscape strategy, too, where we have flowering meadows that change with the seasons rather than mowed lawns. The forest edge is reforested, and we're replacing invasive species with native plants. and thinking about what kinds of gardens are particularly welcoming around the building. I didn't talk too much yet about the courtyard at the center of the building. One thing about having all of the program on the ground floor is you can imagine the spread. This is a 76,000 square foot building, and again, it's got the lower level and the upper partial level, but it could be you could go in and sort of be in the middle of a building and not know where you are. And so we wanted to have light and green and transparency throughout. So there's a courtyard that kind of anchors the flow all the way around. And that is also a spot that Reed Hildebrand is really helping us think through what the plantings and the art, the sculpture that will be installed there, and how that'll kind of be a really core part of this building. Other questions?
How do you get to your offices? I don't see any major stairway.
So there actually are two stairs, two stairways, and they are close to each other. One is here into the study center, and one is here in this corridor. And then there's an elevator as well here. Yep, stair, elevator. But one thing that actually has been interesting in thinking about, museums often have a grand stair, right? But going up to the offices is not a public space. So in some early iterations of the design, so how are we going to treat the stair, and how are we thinking about the stair? Sort of, then as you sort of thought about it when the museum's open, you realize people might just walk up the stair because it's so appealing, and then be not at a gallery space or at a space that really didn't have much to find at the other end other than people working, which is also fun, but not the public experience necessarily. So the stairs they'll be beautiful, but they're quite functional, and they're meant to kind of really facilitate the dynamic up and down between the staff. I mean, one of the great things about being nested in a college is the way we work is really a flow, and we're in and out of it. It's not like you come in and you sit in an office and work all day. You're in the galleries, you're in the classrooms, you're talking to people, you're going over to other buildings on campus. There's just really a lot of movement. So we want this building to be all about moving through and really the ongoing exchanges with people that can happen.
So when do you hope to break ground, and is your funding in place?
We are hoping to break ground in September.
You mean in 2 months?
In 2 months. And so in between now and then, we're still finalizing permitting and putting up construction fencing and construction trailers, all the enabling things, and breaking ground this fall. And our funding is going very, very well, and we still have more to go. So I really am so grateful for everyone's support, and please do support this project. It's really important. And but it's going well, and it's just remarkable how supportive the Williams community is, and how important art is to the Williams alumni and the larger Williams community. Everywhere I go, it's just such an important part of the college experience, and the role that the museum played really is in everybody's experience across all different generations.
How many classrooms are there in the building?
There will be 4 classrooms, 2 dedicated object study classrooms, a 3rd classroom that is set up to accommodate works of art from the collection, but is also set up as a digital humanities classroom, so that the kinds of documentation and research that faculty and students are doing with our curators on the collection. So it's a collection-based digital humanities space. So that's the 3rd classroom. Then there's a seminar room that is more for if you've had your class in the galleries, but you want to sit down somewhere where you have a space to yourself to sort of talk further. That seminar room will be for those purposes. So those 4 classrooms. And then there's a separate collection study room also in the same kind of study center space, which is primarily for works on paper, but not exclusively. And it is adjacent to works on paper storage, so the collection will be very accessible. All of those classrooms are actually serviced by an art corridor behind that comes straight from the freight elevator into the art corridor in a holding area. So again, making the collection very, very accessible to those classrooms. That corridor also goes into the galleries, so for making it very accessible for installation. And then, of course, the works on paper that are stored, right on the same level as the study center there's an easy back and forth to the classrooms.
Would there be regular kind of art history classes?
Yes.
So, having taught at Williams for more than 40 years myself, I'm well aware of how pressed students are to get from one
Yes.
class to another, and how often they come late because the distance is
Yeah.
too great. Now, this museum is going to be farther
Yeah.
away than any other classrooms are at the moment. So, how have you thought about handling it?
Yeah.
How's the college thought about it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's been a really important question throughout all of the thinking about the location of where this building would be. So essentially, we've had groups of students, often with the architects and others from the building project committee, walking from every part of campus to the new museum site. So in some cases, if you live in Greylock and you have a early morning class, then that's a kind of quick trip, and there's a cafe right there, and that's an easy thing. Another, but we'll have plenty of studio art classes, so walking from Spencer to the new museum and thinking about what those art paths are from the east side of campus, the very east side of campus on Water Street, to the west side of campus, where the museum will be. Is figuring out what those paths are going to be and what the different kind of ways that we can expedite that movement back and forth. So it's been, we're doing all of the R&D that we can do now, but we're also going to be learning a lot once we open. The other thing I think about, so the art history department will stay in this building. This building will be renovated, and the gallery spaces and the spaces that the museum staff now occupy will be put to other uses, probably in arts use, but the art history faculty will still be here, and there will still be classrooms here as well. But our colleagues who are collaborating with us on this process are, they're very excited about the possibility of teaching in the new WCMA space, and there's lots of ways we're making that easy. These collaborative workspaces, the fact that there's a cafe, the fact that there will be parking, the fact that there's really ample bike parking. There's different ways that, that you can sort of schedule the teaching into your overall flow of the day, and lots of different spaces to meet and to perch, even to hold office hours, that sort of thing. So we're really trying to think about, again, this flow of not just those of us who work at the museum, but everybody who collaborates and for whom this museum is such an important resource.
Yeah, I was thinking less of the pathways that you take to get here and cross it to
Yeah.
than of the amount of time that the college now allows between one class and another.
Yeah.
I think for 10 minutes or something like that. How is that going to be possible?
It's been, that is, the amount of time between classes has also been part of the discussion, too. Obviously not in the museum's control, but we can contribute to that dialogue. The reality is the center of gravity of campus has already shifted west pretty dramatically with the opening of the new science buildings. And so there's, for example, when I talk to my colleagues in dining, there's need for, there's real pressure on Peresky now because it's become kind of the go-to place to eat as the center of gravity has moved west. So we're going to add, we're going to add to that, no question. And then the whole kind of community needs to sort of figure out how we adjust and make it as positive an experience as possible. But there, who knows? I mean, I think the time between classes, and then the other kind of question of the portion of the day that is for academic purposes versus the portion of the day that's for athletics and other co-curricular activities. How does that play into this? And all of those things are certainly being discussed. The college has been doing, as you know, a planning exercise for sort of ways of thinking about how the spaces across campus all relate to each other and how what all of the different strategic needs are for everything from where students live to where they eat to where the classes are held to how the collections and resources are available to be taught with. So we have the benefit of that sort of framework planning, space framework planning, as we're thinking about how this is going to work. And some things like that we don't have now, like I mentioned the public bus, but an electric shuttle is something that I would love to see. I just don't, I don't think we're quite there yet to know what all of the different possibilities are going to be. A bike share, all of those things, but it's definitely going to be a combination. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the art history folks are going to stay here.
Yeah.
Have there been any decisions made about what the rest of this building is going to do?
None.
I hope you don't mess with this room.
We're not going to mess with it. This room is so lovely. It's just such a pleasure to be in here. There's no decisions yet, but we do have, one decision. One decision is that there's permission to move forward with the space planning exercise for this building. So in the fall, there will be an RFP that goes out to programmers, space programmers, to think about what the purpose can be. There's a really strong interest in using this space for the arts, and that would be across arts. It would be visual arts, but also performing arts and literary arts, and thinking about how these spaces could be a place where the arts come together, or a place where students who are involved in the arts but want to do things on their own outside of the curriculum have a place to do it. Because right now there's really fabulous buildings dedicated to visual arts, music, theater, dance. But if you try to book those spaces outside of the context of a class, they're not so available. They're fully used for curricular purposes. So thinking about what the co-curricular possibilities might be. And also another thing that we're hearing really a lot is that making spaces are of great interest here on campus, and there's some more opportunity there. So part of that would be the digital arts, part of it would be just other kinds of making happening. So more to come on that. So if we're opening in 2027, the museum will move out just before. We're going to actually keep the teaching program going pretty actively throughout the planning process for moving to the new building. We're going to pull back on our exhibition program, but really lean into the teaching program. And then we'll move to the new building, and at that point, this building will be available to renovate and bring to its next era too. What did I not mention, Roz?
I think you covered a lot of things, Pam. Sounds good to me. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming. I'm so grateful that you're all interested in the new WCMA project, and I hope you'll stay engaged. We learned so much from all of these conversations. Your questions today are just enormously informative for the ongoing thinking, and there's a lot of work left to do, so really, really grateful. Yeah.
How can we donate?
Oh, good question. You can donate, you can call me, but you can also donate online for sure. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking. That's wonderful.